Hi everyone, I'm Miranda and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm excited to have my mum Donna join me today.
Hello.
And we'll be discussing The Return of the Soldier by Rebecca West, which was our pick for November's book club. It's a bit different today. We normally do a tea reads episode on Friday, but because we also always do a book club episode on the 20th and today's the 20th, we're doing the book club conversation. But don't worry, there will be a tea read special episode going live on Sunday.
That's right.
For Stir Up Sunday.
Yes,
we're going to be stirring up our Christmas pudding.
Yeah.
And sharing a few appropriate extracts on that day. So I hope we'll see you again on Sunday. But anyway, I'm excited to discuss this.
Too.
This was my first Rebecca West book. Have you read any others by her?
I read one of her memoir ones, but a long time ago, and I think she's perhaps more famous for those. But this was my first time, and I've always wanted to read this one, so I was very excited when you picked it.
Well, I thought it was an appropriate choice as Armistice Day falls in November, and I really enjoyed this. It wasn't quite what I was expecting, but I thought it was so well done.
It was beautifully written.
Really beautifully written. She's such a good writer.
Yeah.
It reminded me very much of a Persephone style book.
Yes.
I love Persephone books, and I thought this would have fit in the canon very well. What did you think of it? What were your impressions?
Well, I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was so interesting because essentially it's another Unreliable Narrator book, isn't it? We've got three women and they're all waiting the return of the soldier.
Yes.
Who's one of their husbands. But the narrator is his cousin, who's the same age, I believe, as him.
Yes, I think so. About 35.
35. And she's really the narrator of the story. So we see everybody from her point of view. Yeah. And I found that fascinating. I really did.
It was a very limited point of view. Her perspective is very narrow. And yes, you're right. You really only see everything through her eyes, and she is an unreliable narrator, as you say. And even there's a point in the story where Chris, the soldier who's returned, tells her about how he first fell in love with Margaret, his first love.
Yes.
And it's Margaret who he remembers.
Yes, he has amnesia after a sort of shell shock, doesn't he? And he only remembers 15 years previously, I guess.
Yes, exactly. And he tells Jenny, his cousin, about how he first met Margaret, how he fell in love with her. But she says something like she wasn't sure if she remembered it all correctly, but she felt that she did. And so when she tells the story again, you're not completely sure if it is truthful or not.
No, if it's quite accurate. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel so sorry for Jenny. I mean, what an awful example of unrequited love.
It really is. She's obviously obsessed and deeply in love with him and has never fully admitted it.
No, and she never even, I don't think, fully comes out with saying that she's in love with him in the book.
No.
But of course it's so clear that she is. We are having a book club discussion, by the way, so there will be some spoilers here, as we're assuming you've read the book.
Hopefully.
If you're watching this, hopefully. But if you haven't read it yet, then you can always return to this video later and watch it then. I loved the writing style. It was quite a modernist style.
It did feel like that. It felt a little bit like Virginia Woolf to me.
Yes.
The same sort of...
Yeah, and I thought she had some really beautiful descriptions of place, both at Monkey Island, but also at their home. And there was one bit I wanted to read, and I thought this was really a touching moment. Next morning, it appeared that the chauffeur had to take the Rolls-Royce up to town to get a part replaced, and Margaret could not be brought from Wealdstone till the afternoon. It fell to me to fetch her. At least, Kitty had said, I might be spared that. Before I started, I went to the pond on the hill's edge. It is a place where autumn lives half the year, for even when the spring lights tongues of green fire in the undergrowth, and the valley shows sunlit between the tree trunks. Here the pond is fringed with yellow bracken and tinged bramble, and the water flows amber over last winter's leaves. Through this brown gloom, darkened now by a surly sky, Chris was taking the skiff, standing in the stern and using his oar like a gondolier. He had come down here soon after breakfast, driven from the house by the strangeness of all but the outer walls, and discontented with the grounds because everywhere but this wet, intractable spot bore the marks of Kitty's genius. After lunch there had been another attempt to settle down, but with a grim glare at a knot of late Christmas roses bright in a copse that 15 years ago had been dark, he went back to the russet-eaved boathouse and this play with the skiff. It was a boy's sport, and it was dreadful to see him turn a middle-aged face as he brought the boat inshore.
Yes, it's dreadful to her, isn't it, to see that he's really living a different life, but he's an older man, but he doesn't realise it.
No, he thinks in his mind he's 20 years old again.
Yes.
And I thought it was a really interesting twist on a coming of age / loss of innocence style book, because you see Chris's loss of innocence. First of all, you hear about it through this childhood sort of romance that he had in his, well, not quite childhood, but young manhood.
Yes, he was
his first love.
Yes.
And how that didn't work out. And you hear through Jenny's eyes how he had to take on his father's business and work hard.
He had to become a man because the business would have failed, and there were all these women in the family that relied upon the money. This is quite clear.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the war is a sort of loss of innocence all over again. And it strips his memory. It puts him back in that time of his young manhood.
His greatest happiness,
his greatest happiness. Well, before that innocence was taken away.
Yes, that's right. When he could really be his true self.
Yes,
perhaps.
exactly. Yeah. But then in this book, he loses that all over again.
He does.
And I think The Return of the Soldier, it's such an interesting title. It's about all of these women at the beginning who are there just waiting for their men to come home.
Yes.
He returns home, in fact, not as a soldier in his mind, but as the youthful man he once was.
Yeah.
And yet by the end of the book, and the last lines are really poignant in it, I think, he has returned as a soldier.
Yes.
With all the disillusionment and potential tragedy that means.
Yes, I feel it's quite a dark ending. Did you feel that too?
Yes, I did. Yeah. I did feel it was dark because with the return of his memory, that means he would be declared fit to go back and fight and very probably be killed.
Yes, that's the sort of vibe you get, that his will to maybe live is a lot diminished.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. I read the introduction in this, which I really recommend. And it's by Victoria Glendinning.
Yeah.
And she wrote that this loss of memory that can be a quite amateur device to use in plotting books.
Yes.
However, in this, it isn't used at all in that way, and in fact it was very common for shell-shocked soldiers to lose their memory.
Yes.
And Rebecca West would have known that. I mean, she was writing this still during the First World War.
I assume right at the beginning of 1918.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not so unlikely as it may strike a more modern audience now.
No.
For someone to be so traumatized.
And it's interesting how they bring in a psychoanalyst.
Yes, which in those days, they didn't understand much about the inner workings of the
human
mind
psyche
and psyche.
Yes,
exactly. And that was interesting. And in fact, how they recover Chris's memory is through linking his mind back to an earlier tragedy, the loss of his child.
Yes, and it's Margaret who knows that's how his first love, that's how to win back his memory. He can't deny the loss of his son.
No, and, exactly. Which was also very sad. And it kind of it made the novel come full cycle.
I felt that.
It starts also with the two women, Kitty, his wife, and Jenny, his cousin, in the nursery. And you know that a child has died.
Yes.
From the beginning. And then that's what's brought in again at the end. But I thought it was such an immediate style of writing. Jenny talks to you as if you've known this family for years. Did you feel that?
I felt
you're
that
instantly
too.
Drawn in as sort of part of the family circle.
And you're seeing it from that point of view. Margaret at first, especially before she really gets to know her, is such a stranger. She's the outsider to these two women who don't really like each other. No. Kitty and Jenny, you feel, but they have this similarity. And I think it's reflected in the Kitty and Jenny, they've got these sort of diminutive names.
Yeah, little girl
names. Whereas Margaret is always Margaret. She's never Peggy in this book.
No, that's true.
Anything
she
like
has
that. Yeah. Stature, doesn't she?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes, which I do find interesting. Kitty is portrayed as such a superficial person. In
very
fact,
unpleasant.
Very unpleasant. You're not meant to like her, though I admit I have a bit of sympathy for her because I thought what a horrific situation.
Yes.
But she is portrayed as someone who is only interested in appearance.
Yeah.
All that you hear about her is how beautiful she is.
Yes.
She's all outward appearance.
And she gets excited when she goes to meet one of the doctors because she loves to meet young men.
Yes.
But that's Jenny's judgment, isn't it?
It is.
Yes.
I mean, you have to be a bit careful because you're seeing everything through Jenny's eyes. And in fact, she must be very jealous of Kitty. She's very jealous of Margaret.
Yeah.
Although she also comes to almost worship Margaret
and want to be part of their relationship. Like, I found that very uncomfortable. It's like the man's best friend tries to get on with them both and become their best friend as a couple.
There's something almost voyeuristic feeling about it, the way she watches them by the lake.
Yes, I was uncomfortable. Were you with that?
Yes, I was. And especially as Chris seems to barely register her existence.
Yes, there's one very sad part where she realises, he really, even when, he's just a naturally polite and very sort of kind man who thinks about others, but really she means very, very little to Chris.
Yes.
And he's her whole world.
Yes, exactly.
It is feeling that. Well, I wanted to read the bit after you've read where Jenny goes to meet Margaret to persuade her to come and meet Chris with the hope that Kitty and she have that on the shock of seeing this old, much-lined woman, not the youthful love of his life, he will give up and return to his proper mind in their heads and accept that time has passed and he was just being foolish, I think.
Yes.
And I think some of the strength of this book too is this capture of the sort of snobbish behaviour of the upper class at that point.
There's so much classism and snobism going on here.
Yeah. So in her parlour I sat and told her how it was with Chris and how greatly he desired to see her. And as I spoke of his longing, I turned my eyes away from her because she was sitting on a sofa, upholstered in velveteen of a sickish green, and she had to clasp them with her seamed, flowery hands. I could see that the skin of her face was damp, and my voice failed me as I looked round the room, because I saw just what Margaret had seen that evening 15 years ago, when she'd laid her cheek to the parlour window at Monkey Island. There was the enlarged photograph of Margaret's mother over the mantelpiece. On the walls were the views of Tintern Abbey, framed in red plush. Between the rickety legs of the china cupboard was the sewing machine, and tucked into the corner between my chair and the fender were a pair of carpet slippers. All her life long, Margaret, who in her time had partaken of the supreme dignity of a requited love, had lived with men who wore carpet slippers in the house.
Yeah, there's just so much judgment there, isn't there?
It really is.
And a sense of superiority.
Yes.
But really both Kitty and Jenny are portrayed as completely sexless.
They are.
They're passionless in a way, although Jenny has so much going on inside her, and yet she's clearly never been able to.
They're not
express
sensual.
This. They're not sensual.
The only thing
women.
you get with Kitty is that she loves her silken underwear, but then.
Yes, but then she looks at it with this sort of air that no one's going to be appreciating it.
Yes.
And you feel that they're almost repulsed physically by Margaret to start. There's so much attention given to her physical appearance, to what she's wearing, to how she moves.
The yellow mac that she's forced to wear, and how ugly
she's written
it
this,
is.
she's like a stain on their lives.
Yes,
or
that's
something. Horrible things. And you realise there's so much sexual jealousy going on there.
Yeah.
You realise, because what's very clear is that Chris is highly attracted to Margaret, that they had a very sensual love affair. It was no marriage of convenience type
not
of thing.
at all. And in fact, it was sexual,
I
think, as well. That comes out.
It does come out. I think you can definitely read that between the lines, can't you? And he still is attracted to her. He has a strong desire for her.
Very much.
It shocks his cousin or someone, the man who writes
he's the vicar, I think, or a local vicar who's one of the, and he has to go over because he gets a letter.
Yes, exactly.
He's very shocked.
And he's shocked by Chris's yearning for this woman.
Yeah.
And I find that sort of tension between the women very interesting.
It is. That's a really good point, because it makes very much, again, Jenny and Kitty on one side and Margaret on the other.
And their idea that beauty is only superficial.
Yes.
That men are attracted only by appearances, or what matters is only this curation of beauty, the way that Kitty's curated the immaculate gardens of the house and the house itself. Both these women have created this idealized house that they feel Chris would never want to leave.
And they get that completely wrong, don't they?
They do. Yeah. They really do.
Yeah, he yearns really for the house of his childhood. He's still yearning for the bedroom that he had 15 years ago, where he stored his fishing rods, which they repeat so many times that you could tell they're absolutely appalled at the fact that there were fishing rods in a bedroom.
Yeah.
But obviously to a man of his age at 20, that wasn't the point. It was his childhood room, and he loved the house as it was.
Margaret is almost, the complete opposite to Kitty.
Yeah.
She is not any more physically as beautiful at all.
No. She's just still a tall, striking woman, comes out.
Yes, it comes out that she's probably a lot more attractive than Jenny
is allowed
to be. But also what's clear is she's a nurturing, motherly, loving caring, good woman.
Yes, she's essentially, I think this is like a paean, and it's very hard. I read it on my Kindle, whereas you had the book. Yeah. But she's actually is a portrayal of goodness in Margaret, and that's very hard to achieve, isn't it?
Yes, it is, because she still is a realistic character somehow.
She is. I do too. The way she handles her husband, she's married. Really, I think because she gave up all hope due to mischance and letters not being. That was pretty horrible. Yeah,
that he did carry on this love for her.
Yeah,
for years. And because of unfortunate circumstances, they never knew that
the other was still pining, because they really fell apart over a silly quarrel. And there's a little joke in that, because the person she quarrels with is Bert Wells. And of course, Rebecca West, who was a very modern woman in
very,
many ways,
yes.
had an illegitimate child with H.G. Wells. She was one of his
had
mistresses.
an affair with
yes,
him.
yeah.
Long affair.
A long affair. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, she's a fascinating woman in her own
Definitely,
right.
and from quite a strong family of feminist sisters. 3 sisters, all very outward going, very different from the 3 women she portrays.
Yes.
I think one of her sisters became a doctor, which in those days must have been
well, definitely. And she herself wrote The Return of the Soldier when she was only in her pretty early 20s.
Yes, like 24
24, I
Amazing
think she wrote it, which is remarkable. It was her second book.
Yeah.
And I thought that was astounding, such talent. But that is interesting. I mean, yes, she would have been a completely different person from the women that she portrays.
Very much.
Who seem almost, they're so frozen, aren't they?
They are. It's quite extraordinary. You see them always sitting and waiting. It's this feeling of frozen in place.
Yes.
And what's interesting is the different places in this novel. You mentioned Monkey Island.
Yes.
And obviously the way he felt about his home before she manicured the lawns and made it all pretty. But Monkey Island is so interesting because it's a real place, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, and the part of the Thames by Bray.
Yes,
which is the nearest village which we've been to. There's a lovely restaurant there called the Hind's Head, which is so good. And of course, the Fat Duck is there as well.
Yes.
Very famous, extraordinary restaurant. We haven't been there.
No, we haven't been to that, but I can recommend the Hind's Head. It's like the cheaper version, but it's lovely.
It's lovely.
In an old pub,
lovely
isn't
old
it?
pub. Yes. Yeah. I'd love to go back and to go to Monkey Island.
Yes.
Having read this book now.
Why is it monkey?
Well, I was reading that apparently they think that originally came from Monk's Island.
Now that would make sense.
Yes.
And there's such an otherworldly quality to that description.
How she describes it. And Rebecca West had been to Monkey Island herself.
Yes, okay.
And there's still a hotel there that apparently I think has been there since the late 1800s.
Oh, wow, so she maybe knew it.
Yes, I think she probably went and stayed.
Okay, that's on my bucket list.
Yes, I know.
Let's go there.
We have to go.
Yeah.
Because the description of it is like this enchanted place, but a very different kind of enchantment from the one you feel is over his home, which is almost like this Sleeping Beauty enchanted castle
almost,
where
I felt that too.
Standing still. Well, they wanted to. I mean, in fact, they're all aging.
Yeah,
but they're so horrified by aging, by not being youthful anymore.
They don't take that well.
And Kitty is always described in youthful terms, generally, like as a rosebud.
Yes, exactly.
And virginal.
Yeah.
And, you know,
she wants to certainly give that aura,
She wants to give that aura. She dresses all in white like a virgin bride when he returns. To very little effect.
Yes. Do you feel as well like there's that touching bit where he turns to ask something of his butler and realises that the butler has died, that his father has died, that in fact time hasn't stood still at all, but these women are trying to make it.
Yes, exactly. And there's something so sad about the fact that they seem to have no life of their own. As they are simply there waiting, it feels like.
Yes.
Without very much going on. Kitty, I'm not sure, ever leaves the house at all. She is almost like this princess in the tower.
That's
that never
strong
stirs
feeling.
out.
And also the feeling is, and there won't be any more children, she says at one point, which is odd considering I think she's younger than him, so she must only be about 30 odd. And you think, what's going on there? It's like he's become desexed in this time. And I found it all very strange. What about the fact that Margaret also loses a child? How did you feel about the deaths of the two boys?
I thought that was strange. I thought it was showing how they were meant to be together, that they should have had Chris and Margaret should have had a child together, and if they had, it would have lived.
Yes, that's what I felt.
They were both living
half lives
without one another.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Jenny is certainly living a half life for sure as well. Really not a life at all.
No.
You feel. She reminded me at the end, there's a horrible description of a poor little, I think sort of like lap dog type style dog that Kitty had but grew tired of. And the poor dog would wander around just looking for someone to love it.
Yes.
And that reminded me of Jenny.
Yes, that's true,
you
actually.
Feel she's sort of rattling around in this house with no one to love her.
No,
no one she can properly love.
Because also she never herself petted that dog, was the story I got. Yes. She too is someone who's almost frozen and incapable of expression, of emotion and affection, even for a little dog.
Yes. Yeah. And their whole world is just tied up with appearances.
Yeah.
That's it, really. Yeah. And what a sad, false half-life that leads you.
It is.
In the end.
It is. Did you think of any other books that you were reminded of or that you would recommend along this?
Well, like I said, it did remind me of the Persephone canon. Yeah. And although it has a very unique voice, I would say, all to itself.
It does.
Perhaps her writing reminded me a little bit of Virginia Woolf in terms of it did feel quite modernist.
Yes.
With Persephone, the books about World War I that I like the most are Just William and Englishman.
Oh, yes. And it's just William and an Englishman.
Yes, not just William. I'm thinking of the school stories. William and Englishman.
That would be a different vibe.
That would be a very different vibe. And Julian Grenfell, the biography of him. Yes. That's really moving. That's one of my favourite Persephone books, actually, but it doesn't get talked about hardly at all.
No.
I wish more people would read it. I'll link to all the books that I mentioned in the description box, of course.
I thought of, I must admit, The Unpleasantness at the Bologna Club, the Dorothy Sayers one.
Oh, yes.
Which is very much an armistice, is Remembrance Day.
It is, and it also shows a real case of a shell-shocked soldier in that too. I mean, obviously Lord Peter himself suffers from shell shock, but a friend of his is even more badly haunted by the First World War in that book, and it makes it a strong book, more than just a mystery.
It is.
I
think so too. I really like that one and often read it in November.
Yes, I listened to it actually, the BBC
and
dramatisation this month. It was, I enjoyed that. And I love that too.
And some of the other sort of Persephone book, although it's a later one, that is The Squire. Some of the sort of, it's a very, very different book, but it's about a woman's world. This one is about a maternal world, so it's very different, but I found it interesting to think of the juxtaposition.
And I will also add one more thing too, is that it's the women who are interesting in this. In the end, I feel like, what's all this fuss about Chris? Really, it doesn't come over as having that much personality, does he?
He doesn't.
I mean, maybe again through Jenny's eyes,
you don't see
him properly, but in a weird way, you also don't. You think, why does she love him so much?
Yes.
He comes across as quite a boring individual in some ways.
He obviously came alive for Margaret and their time. And I must say, it's a book that really, sadly, has almost no food in it. I did look through.
Yes, the best bit in it are the duck's eggs. Yes,
on
Monkey Island. They enjoy the best duck's eggs. But we thought our tea loaf cake, they probably also would have enjoyed.
I think they
on Monkey Island and the sort of picnics and stuff that they had on the island.
Yeah.
So we thought
we tried.
We tried.
It was that or bread and butter, I think, was the only other thing that was really
very dull.
Yes.
Food not great in this. But we did a tea reads episode when we made this, so I'll link to that too if you'd like the recipe, because I think we're going to pour out some more tea and have a slice now.
Sounds good to me.
But do let us know what you thought of The Return of the Soldier if you read it. Love to hear your thoughts on this book. And then our December read, of course, we're excited to announce, will be Winter Solstice by Rosamund Pilcher.
I can't wait.
I forgot to get the copy down, but it's actually just
up
here.
there, isn't it?
Yes. All out of the table.
It's a lovely book. One of my very favourites. I read it every December, and it's one of those that you can read in real time, isn't it?
Well, yes, almost. You can. Almost some of the days, which I do like to do.
Yeah.
In the lead up to Christmas. Of course, we'll be discussing it on the 20th.
Yes.
So this is one of my favourite Christmas books. I do read it every year. You love it too.
I do.
So we hope you'll join us in reading this one in December.
And it does look fat, but it's a real page turner.
But it is honestly a real page turner. And this edition at least has pretty big font. So yeah. But anyway, so we'll see you for the book club on the 20th of December, and we'll be back on Sunday for our special Tea Read Stir Up Sunday episode. Yeah. So hopefully see you then. Goodbye.
Goodbye.